We are live for another Women's Wrestling Talk Deep Dive episode, and this week we are going to be talking about NXT, the early years for the women's division. I am really excited to get into that, so stay tuned. I have a lot to discuss when it comes to that.
10, 9, 8, 7. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
Hello guys, and welcome back again for another episode of Deep Dive. I am really excited to plug into this particular topic this week because as usual, we have seen since NXT's inception that they have always had the wrestling world buzzing, and this week has absolutely been amazing just in general for wrestling. So it made me think, as we're seeing NXT kind of go into this next chapter now where they're going to be on the CW, so it brings on a lot more expectations for the product. And we'll see where they choose to go now with that huge accomplishment. I want to kind of look back and think about all the things that help to really create this feeling that NXT is usually such a stable product that constantly keeps reinventing what type of wrestlers that we know are going to make it big when they get to the main roster. But it even changed the perception of developmental territories that we see, where you're not really always waiting for them to get to the main roster. You're already excited to see what they're doing in NXT, and I think that that's helped to get people excited about some smaller developmental territories that we see even outside of WWE over the past few years, when people have gotten excited about seeing what OVW has done and seeing some more NWA in many ways, really starting to now have more of like respect for these smaller promotions that have a wealth of talent in these promotions. So let's kind of get into the history of those early years in NXT, specifically for the women's division. So just to kind of give a gloss over the history of NXT, NXT started out and was introduced to us in February of 2010. And at that time, it seems like, and I think in many interviews, a lot of people that were attached to NXT at the time made it clear that the way that the setup was for NXT, where it was a show that they were doing in kind of competition style to kind of let the viewers feel like they really had a say-so in who was going to be a part of WWE at the time. Had a bit of success, but at the same time, it wasn't really a show that people were clamoring to see, to really think about or really feel like they were going to get like the next stars in WWE to take over. So we saw in 2012, NXT was relaunched and it became its own brand to really help to replace the defunct Florida Championship Wrestling as a new WWE developmental territory. And after this rebranding, fans really started to see NXT as its very own thing, and they really started to garner a cult-like following. So on this episode, I really wanted to discuss some key matches and pivotal moments during the 2013 to 2016 period of NXT to really help to show that hunger that a lot of fans started to gain for women's wrestling within WWE, and to really show it was a completely different era moving forward. And we really see that drive that the women in NXT had during that establishment of the black and gold era to really change the perception of what women's wrestling can be. I think not just in WWE, but it was helping to solidify the years before that. I would say maybe even a decade before that, that a lot of American women's wrestlers were establishing on the indie circuit. So we see in this rebanding of FCW to NXT, we saw women like Aubrey Marie, Sasha Banks, Emma, Asuka, Bailey. I'm sorry, not Asuka, Oksana, who I really liked, by the way. But yeah, that was one of my favorites early on. Bailey, Alicia Fox, Summer Rae, and Paige. They really started to make up that that looked of what we could think of when we thought about the NXT women's division. And they really started to make a name for themselves very early on in the development of this version of NXT. And at the start of 2013, NXT gives us a great feud with Summer Rae and Paige that helps to set the tone that these women would have full-on storylines that the fans can follow and get behind, so that we feel that they're not just coming out to have one-off matches, but actually getting us plugged in to what these women can bring to the table. And you really see that 2013, that we have a great feud with Summer Rae and Paige. They really start to bring it, and they're really getting the opportunity, most importantly, to do that. And in June of that year, a tournament to determine the first ever NXT Women's Championship commences. It was announced that there would be an 8-woman singles tournament featuring 4 women from NXT and 4 women from WWE's main rosters. The participants in this tournament were Tamina, Snuka, Paige, Bailey, Alicia Fox, Sasha Banks, Summer Rae, Emma, and Oksana. So it was quite fun to go back to that, because even though I was watching NXT at this time, I did not remember this particular tournament and the participants in it. So it was nice to kind of have a nostalgic look back at these early rumblings of change that were happening in NXT. Yeah, it was just nice to look at that. So we see that this was a very exciting tournament for the fans. It really did show that NXT was going to be a flagship for WWE to really start showing real women's wrestling. It wasn't perfect yet at this time by any means. We still had to deal with short matches that probably would be around the 5-minute limit, including entrances, but they were showing potential for that possibly starting to change. And Paige came out victorious in this tournament against Emma in the finals. So I wanted to take a moment to really kind of highlight that match, because it was so important in this next step to really establishing a strong women's division. So we kind of get into this NXT Women's Championship match, tournament finals match. And you can just tell when it got to this point in the tournament how much these women really wanted to be champ. This happened on July 24th, 2013, and these women had really good reception from the fans in this final match. The moment they came out, the fans were totally on fire, chanting the entire time and even holding up Emma and Paige cutouts. The 2 women waste no time, immediately getting into the action, eager to become the inaugural NXT Women's Champion. Emma gets the lead early on when she puts on an arm submission, kind of stalling Paige's offense. Paige gets back into the game and takes control of the match, delivering a brilliant fisherman suplex, then a pin. But Emma won't give up early on. Toward the middle of the match, it starts to get really intense between both women, as they feel like the honor of being at the top of the division is so close. Paige locks in a cloverleaf finisher and has the crowd at the edge of their seats. Emma breaks out and tries to gain control. Both women go to the top rope, and Emma gives a superplex to Paige to take her out for a bit. As Emma tries to get a pin, Paige gets her foot on the top rope to break the count. Then we see Paige get that Paige Turner finisher in to win the title. This was such a monumental moment for Paige. You see, as soon as she gets that 3 count in, all of the emotion of wanting a title like this at NXT, and really when she came to NXT wanting to have a strong women's division, literally all over her face, the emotion that she had, excitement, more than likely a moment where she feels like she can kind of exhale because she was able to reach that type of goal in NXT. And especially we've seen not only Paige talk about this, but when we saw that in the movie about her family and her time at NXT, with every moment that she had leading up to this, it was always unpredictable to know if her goals, what she wanted for women's wrestling, were actually going to happen in WWE. And at that time, it was very uncertain to think that there would be a change in what the women were allowed to do. There were many times where Paige made it clear that she saw herself as an anti-diva. So to have this moment where Emma and Paige had such a phenomenal match and actually got that time to show that was a big deal. And we see that after the match, all the NXT divas and Triple H, who was the head of NXT at the time, comes out and congratulates Paige. And we see, as she called herself at the time, the Diva Tomorrow, crowned champion. And very, very soon into Paige's time as champ, we immediately see that Summer Rae is not done with their feud and she wants an opportunity at the title. Let's take a second to have that moment you see with Paige being so excited to be able to call herself NXT Women's Champ. And you can see with Triple H, there was a full out plan on how to change the narrative of women's wrestling in the company and really give these very talented women the chance to really go forward with that. And Paige being the inaugural NXT Women's Champion was certainly setting the tone right, even though I must say, in all the time that Emma was in NXT, I always felt like there should have been at least one time where she was able to hold the title too. But starting off the history of this NXT Women's title was certainly right to have Paige get this. So just like I was saying, immediately going into Paige's title run, she certainly had pretty much had a strike on her back where everyone was going to come for that title. We had so many women that were so hungry, and we only had one title for the women at this time. So Summer Rae was definitely going to try to make sure that she would get that chance to see if she could hold that title. And we see early on that chemistry that Paige and Summer Rae had already built going into 2023 was exhibited with this title match that they had. And I thought it was a really good idea for NXT to make sure that they were touching base with Summer Rae and Paige getting back into the ring together, because they had really great chemistry. And Paige and Summer Rae being so different from each other, even with their ring styles, really complemented each other. So we see this is Paige's first title defense, an important showing for her to prove that she was, in fact, the woman that should hold that title at that time. Summer Rae came into the match with a real chip on her shoulder because she had not won that NXT Women's Championship tournament. And you know, especially with Summer Rae's personality at this time, she definitely thought that she had that tournament in the bag. So this match begins in a very intense, fast-paced way. You can see that both women are ready to leave it all on the line. Let's not forget that these women had already had a problem with one another. Summer Rae was using her height and flexibility to stay on top of Paige, barely giving her a chance to breathe. Toward the middle of the match, Paige comes back and delivers vicious kicks to Summer Rae's face and on the turnbuckle to turn on with that Paige Turner, always one of my favorite moves, to get the win. So this was a very strong showing for Paige during her time as champ, well, early on in her time as champ, to really show that she was going to be a strong champ, and it wasn't a fluke that she was going to keep that title for some time. And even though some of the matches I'm going to mention weren't necessarily for the NXT Women's title, I definitely think that these were some to highlight, as it was still showing other women that were on the roster that really had a lot of promise, and you saw that more than likely they were going to get their time to hold that title. So we go on to this next match, and this was Charlotte's debut match against Bayley, and this occurred in July of 2013. And I love how you just had this early stage of Charlotte in this match, and how she was truly going against that bright-eyed, ponytail-wearing Bayley. And after Bayley's entrance in this match, the Nature Boy Ric Flair comes out to a thunderous reception, and he talks about his love for NXT and how he loves how they are really taking time to establish the young talent there. And he makes sure that after this, he introduces Charlotte to the world. You can see how excited he is to have his daughter actually be a part of like this new movement in NXT. And it's funny because we're being introduced to this very new, very shy, in a way, Charlotte that was just happy to be there. You can see her smiling and really wanting the fans to like her, and she's wearing a big smile on her face. She comes out and does a cartwheel and split in the middle of the ring, and really showing off that she's going to use a lot of her gymnastic skills moving forward during her time at NXT. And Bayley is playing it cool during the match, but it really must have been a bit frustrating having Ric Flair at ringside. I mean, that is a huge distraction, especially when he's taking everything extremely personal that's happening to Charlotte in this match. I mean, for him, he's still seeing his little girl, and Bayley is just trying to have a competitive match. But Charlotte really shows in this debut match that she is going to be a force to be reckoned with on the roster. A submission called Charlotte's Web, and a version of a neckbreaker takes Bayley out. And of course, that is all to the joy of Ric Flair, who absolutely wanted to see his girl win her debut match. And during this match, you start to see that even though Charlotte was all smiles, she kind of brought out the fangs toward the end of the match. And we kind of see that there might be more to her little evolution in her character as she moves on into really getting deep into her time at NXT. I thought this was a great showing, or like a preview to see like the chemistry that Bayley and Charlotte had in the ring together. I think that it definitely established, as I said, that they're going to have a big deal on the roster with having a second generation wrestler that is very impressive, like Charlotte was. So I think a very pivotal moment in NXT's women's history very early on with the development of this roster. So we kind of move on to another match that I just really wanted to point out during this 2013 time, and that was AJ Lee versus Bayley. We are still in this very early stage of Bayley being introduced to NXT and her really getting her character over. And you can tell that this match was a big deal for Bayley. So early in her NXT career, she was standing in the ring with AJ Lee. And at that time, AJ had been one of the most successful Divas champions. So for her to come down to developmental and put her title on the line really says a lot to the personality of AJ. She really, really wanted that level of competition that she probably thought she could find in NXT. And even if the character of AJ found Bayley weird, her putting on a good match for Bayley proved that she found this match to be something that she was absolutely behind the scenes really happy to be a part of. I even love the build up to this match where you see Bayley and AJ interact backstage. And Bailey is just confused. Oh, excuse me. AJ is just confused by Bailey wanting to get close to her and wanting to hug her and telling her how much she looked up to AJ. Just really good work on AJ's part with her character, where she obviously does not like getting close to anyone and certainly does not want to hug someone like Bailey. So I liked how they even allowed, even the week before, to really build up into this match. And we see that Bailey starts this match wanting to give AJ a hug so bad. The crowd is even coaxing her on, but AJ looks disgusted and pie faces her. AJ puts her in a chokehold and taunts Bailey by saying that she's giving her neck a hug. And Bailey gets the advantage in this match. Instead of giving a Bailey to belly, she pushes AJ to the corner and says that she just wants to give her a hug. So we see that even though this is supposed to be a very competitive match, Bailey is just starstruck by actually being in the ring with someone that she admired so much. And AJ is literally not fazed by this at all. She's not losing her title. So Bailey starts to show maybe a little bit of competitiveness. And she gets a big elbow off the top rope. When AJ shows that she's hurt, Bailey loses her focus and goes to try to console Lee and misses her opportunity to win when AJ hits her finisher, the Shiny Wizard, to retain her title. So it was really nice to see AJ give that stamp of approval to Bailey by wanting to have this match with her, because you could tell for a long time that AJ really had this goal of wanting to see a crop of women's wrestlers come into WWE that really wanted to compete and who really showed range with their characters, that they weren't necessarily painted with like this diva personality. And you definitely saw that even with the early iterations of Bailey's character. So it was really refreshing to see these two women actually compete and have so much interaction. I would have loved to have seen more with these two women, but just the fact that we have this on the record books is good enough. So I'm going to go to another match that Bailey. Go to another match that I saw. Now I'm just going to say this for the record. I'm just putting it out there. A few episodes ago, I put that, it would be my dream to see AJ come back and kind of have a stab at competing with a lot of women that are on the roster now in WWE. And Bailey's still on my list for Bailey and AJ to have another match. So we'll see what happens with that. Maybe my wish might come true. But we're going to move on to another match that I have in mind, and that was Paige versus Natalya. This to me was a very important match, a championship match for Paige, and this happened December of 2013. And I love that, just like we saw in the match prior that I just mentioned with AJ, we see with Natalya, and she's been doing this too, still doing this now, to see the need of really helping to develop and establish a lot of women that are coming into NXT. And you saw that Natalya was doing that early on in NXT with taking on Paige. So it was really nice that she wanted to come to NXT and see that it's very important to really solidify Paige as a strong champ. And Paige came into this match looking absolutely ecstatic to face off against Natalya. Both women have grown up in wrestling families and have a deep respect for the industry. We see a strong showing of technical and submission-based wrestling early on in this match. A bit of trash talking from Paige doesn't really faze Natalya, as she keeps her head in the game and keeps Paige on the mat in a headlock. Paige gets into second gear and realizes that she has to step it up. Natalya is stretching Paige out and really trying to tire out the champ by working on her abdominal area. You start to see a bit of frustration from Natalya as she delivers a brutal clothesline and the trademark sharpshooter. Paige pushes through by throwing Natalya into the ropes to gain some time to recover. Natalya comes for Paige, but the champ quickly gets the Paige turner in to retain the title. I think that out of the matches that Paige had NXT as a champ, this was one of the strongest matches that she had, but it also went to solidify that Paige had defeated someone in a title match that was already on the main roster and established, on one of the main rosters and already established. So I think this was such a strong and important match for Paige to have in her title reign. And I'm going to go to another match that really capped off or started off 2014 right, but that also was important in Paige's title reign. And that was her match against Emma at NXT Arrival. Now, just in general, this match was important, but the pay-per-view was as well. We see that Paige and Emma, as they come to this point in 2014, solidified what the die-hard NXT fans already knew, that women's wrestling was alive and kicking on the NXT brand, that Paige and Emma were at the top of the mountain at that time in the developmental territory, and only one of them could hold that title. Because of the buzz that the women made at NXT, Stephanie McMahon decided to come down and introduce the competitors of this match. Now, just to bring this back to memory, this was the first streaming pay-per-view on the newly developed WWE Network at the time. So everything surrounding this pay-per-view was a big deal. So it is awesome that NXT thought that it was extremely important to put a lot of attention around this match between Paige and Emma. I also think that with the attention and the time and the build-up that they put towards this match, it was really showing that Triple H really wanted to make sure that the NXT title was women's title was being held to the same importance as the men's title. And as we know, especially on the main roster at this time, that was not the case. So it was very refreshing for a fan like me to be able to look at NXT to see the women's title be held to that regard, and to have Stephanie put a stamp of approval on these ladies who would be the next divas in WWE, because they were certainly going to be called up. So at this point, Paige was champion for 218 days. So we see that Paige was really getting these huge accolades with the awesome matches that she was having, and she was, kind of on a roll. And you can see the passion oozing off of both women. In this build-up, Emma was making it very clear she was so close to winning this title when these two ladies fought to win to establish the NXT title, and she felt like this was her time to take it. And we see that Paige doesn't want to give up that title, and Emma wants to move up the ladder. So both have very strong intentions and goals with this match. And immediately when the bell rings, Paige smushes Emma in the face, and Emma takes Paige down. A pattern of takedowns from both women keeps this match going at a fast pace. Paige keeps Emma in a headlock for a bit of time to wear her out, but soon Emma gets her bearings again and starts to get the upper hand. You start to see a snarling, mean Emma that has gotten rid of the bubbles and the catchy dance moves. She was all business in this match. Emma pulls out an amazing submission that tears at the arm of Paige and drives her feet into Paige's back. Paige manages her way out, but Emma takes control again and delivers a hell of a powerbomb. Paige gets that trademark finisher in, but Emma kicks out. Paige lays in an incredible scorpion lock to get the win. So this was a hell of a match and overall hell of a pay-per-view that really helped to shape this next chapter for NXT and WWE, as WWE and the WWE Network was really gaining traction with this type of exclusive programming. And NXT definitely helped in those early years to make WWE Network must-see, and really helped with bringing those early big numbers for subscriptions. So we see that Paige, not too long after this, vacated the NXT Women's Championship after holding it for 301 days when she won the Divas Championship. And a tournament followed this vacancy title dilemma and brings us into the Charlotte Flair title era at NXT as she defeated Natalya to win the title. So we see this new transition now into what NXT is going to be after a pivotal part of NXT and Paige moves on to the main roster. I think this was a great way to start off what this new title reign would be like. And this match to me was handled quite well. You see, and this is May 29th, 2014. So Paige, at this time, she's holding the NXT Championship and the Divas Championship, decides to come see this match in person, and she decided to take to the mic before the match started and talked about everything that it takes to be an NXT Women's Champion. And it was nice to see that Paige was there in person to pass the torch. We see Ric Flair was, of course, in Charlotte's corner, but this time we were able to have Bret Hart come to be in Natalya's corner. And both women have a lot of confidence going into this match. And I love seeing the pride that both Flair and Bret had for these women competing. It truly showed how far women's wrestling had come in WWE. I mean, think about it. Two women that have that much wrestling history in their families actually having that time spotlighted and really having their families respect it, and they're showing that they're the new chapter in their family's history with their careers. That was just a really great build up, and if you haven't seen that, I really encourage you to. Both women start the match by locking up, and it was immediately clear that both women had done their homework on each other and would counter each other's moves at every step. We see a series of submission holds on display from both women, and it is a treat to see. Natalya starts to get into the head of Ric Flair by taunting him. You see some hard chops and slaps set the tone that these women will tear each other apart to get the win. As Charlotte starts to get the upper hand in the middle of the match, Ric Flair starts to taunt Bret. But Bret doesn't want to create any unnecessary distractions in the match, so he tries to stay focused. We see that in this match, Natalya is just showing off that she is a master of counters, and she really has an encyclopedic knowledge of submission holds that kind of resembles Dean Malenko. There was a great spot where Charlotte hits her finisher, and then Natalya gets the sharpshooter. And I just love how they're just constantly matching each other, counter the counter, hold for hold. It was just such a brilliantly done match that really has you looking, and you cannot look away at any moment because of what these two women could do, while at the same time telling a really great story. So you see Charlotte gets the figure four lock in, and over again she's trying to get this until a series of slaps from Natalya while in the figure four lock stops this cycle. And the crowd is going nuts at this point in the match. Just a really high-spirited, intense match where the fans are just unglued. So we see Natalya really brings it, but the resolve of Charlotte to never give up gets her the win and the NXT Women's title. This, like I said, to me, this is always a match that I think about, not just in the beginning of the formation of the NXT Women's roster, but just in general. I just think it was a great match start to finish. The plugging in of Ric Flair and Bret was great. Because it brought out that competition about like which family could truly say that they are the best, and it really brought that intensity to this I felt like it could have been a longer feud, but to this match. And we see that there's a certain pedigree that Charlotte brought to the table, and it helped to bring the women's division to another level. I love that her reign started with Charlotte making it clear that she just had it in her genes to be at the top level in wrestling. And once we get to the stage, we start really getting into 2014, we have to talk about that influence that these women had, the four horsewomen in NXT at this point. We have to talk about how during Charlotte's reign, she saw that there was a lot of competition for her title, and that other women in particular, 3 women in particular, were coming for that title that would later be known as the Four Horsewomen. These 4 women had amazing chemistry and pushed one another to show where the future of wrestling, NXT, and eventually WWE would be going. Their personalities were so different, and that was so refreshing for a fan like me. Bayley was a true babyface that had to deal with constantly proving that she wasn't a pushover in the ring, and she would fight for her opportunities. Charlotte was truly that once-in-a-lifetime wrestler that has everything that you would want in a main event wrestler, and she knew it. The higher-ups were behind her, and she knew that her future would be on the main roster. Sasha was the mean girl that actually had the fortitude to push her way to the top of the division. She had the diva look, but she fought like a heavyweight. Becky Lynch was truly the underdog. At this time in WWE, many fans had to grow accustomed to seeing non-stereotypical UK wrestlers, and Becky really was, to me, one of the first Irish wrestlers to really show that. Even though Becky wasn't new to the industry, she had a bit more that she had to do to adapt to that amazing wrestling that we saw on the women's roster in WWE. And she also really had to find her character. But once she came out with that steampunk brawler style, she had really became a hit with the fans at that point, and a part of the Four Horsemen stable. And one of the biggest feuds that we saw during Charlotte's time as champ was against Sasha Banks. So let's kind of dig into that. We kind of see how Sasha and Charlotte, they were just money together. They really had a great chemistry. You saw that tension building as Sasha was kind of moving out of being in the shadow of Charlotte, and boy, did she come out. So let's focus on this December 11, 2014 match between Charlotte and Sasha at NXT Our Evolution. We see Sasha Banks come into this match making it extremely personal, taunting Ric Flair and Charlotte for weeks prior to this match, even coming to the ring wearing Charlotte's shirt. So they were once friends, now they were mortal enemies. Sasha, of course, starts off this match by talking trash, even throwing Charlotte's shirt at her, which sends Charlotte off. Sasha goes back to the mind games by chopping Charlotte. Charlotte delivers some brutal chops, but the calculated Sasha makes sure that she takes the match outside and throws the champ into the stairs. Sasha Banks mocks Ric Flair again, doing his trademark strut in the middle of the ring, which the fans absolutely love, before attempting to slap Charlotte. Sasha uses Charlotte's moves against her to remain control, all while chanting, "Woo!" And once again, with these things that Sasha was doing at this match, this was the match that really showed that Sasha was in her peak heel version of her character. It was just so great. The mind games, the sarcasm, the arrogance that Sasha had at this time, it just played well off of Charlotte. And we get a crazy dive from Sasha to the outside of the ring onto Charlotte. Charlotte gets back in the game when she spares the hell out of Sasha. This causes the fans to become unglued, and they definitely feel like everything is back in Charlotte's favor. Charlotte gets the natural selection finisher off the top rope to retain her championship. And for me, this was one of the best matches that I feel that Charlotte and Sasha ever had, whether it was on the main roster or NXT. Their chemistry was just there. And this was long-term looking, I feel, because NXT really let that lingering resentment that Sasha had with knowing that she was that good, but feeling like Charlotte was getting all of the attention from the NXT audience because she was the champ. So this was really great. I loved how they were bringing Ric Flair into the storyline too, but not having it overshadow Charlotte as a champ. As we know, Charlotte had a very successful NXT championship reign, really showing how much of a genetic marvel she was in the ring. But she had 3 women, once again, chomping at the bit to face off against her. So that comes to a head at NXT TakeOver Rival, where we see a fatal 4-way for the NXT Championship on February 11th, 2015. I had to put this in here because you don't see this often, but you had these women, Charlotte, Bayley, Sasha, and Becky, really starting to get over so much with the crowd that they all inevitably had to be a part of this match, this championship match. And we're seeing the different, very unique and very valid reasons on why they all feel that they deserve to be champ. So it was fitting to see all of these women together fighting for this title. And Charlotte definitely had a lot on her hands, facing off against 3 women for the title. Becky at this time was still seen as the underdog and had a lot to prove. The champ, Charlotte, starts the match going after everyone early on to kind of, get some people out of the ring. So everyone goes outside of the ring, but Sasha and Becky make sure that they throw Charlotte into the LED board that's on this ring apron, and that instantly takes her out for a bit. And at this point, Sasha and Becky are going in for the kill, and they take out Bayley. We see that Becky's personality has changed since she decided to part ways with Sasha Banks. She is aggressive in her pursuit to become the champ. And Sasha is having none of this, making it clear that she made Becky relevant before she attacked her former protege. Sasha is on it with making sure that she breaks up every pin attempt in this match. Bayley is on it as well, coming out with some big time moves to change the flow of the match and get herself back in there, which is not easy to do, by the way, in this match when everyone is just coming for each other. And honestly, I applaud these women for not having like anything crazy happen in this match with so many moving parts. They really created a proper flow for everybody to get their stuff in. So we see Sasha pull off a double knee in the corner of the ring to Charlotte and Becky, which was really impressive and got the crowd going. We see Sasha pull off one of her signature dives out of the ring on Bayley and Becky. And if that didn't get the hype enough, Charlotte decides that she's going to do the same thing, and she took out all 3 competitors with a dive out of the ring. One of the things that just had me chuckling throughout this match was seeing Sasha make sure that she kept Becky and Bayley out of the ring to apply the crossface to Charlotte. She was just absolutely focused on making sure that no one else was getting that opportunity to either pin the champ or tap the champ. Sasha was so ravenous during this match, really making sure that she was squashing everyone else's attempt to become the champion. And as Charlotte starts to fade out from this crossface, we see Sasha get the pin to become the NXT Women's Champ for the first time. Sasha's reign was successful in proving that she was no longer in Charlotte's shadow and that she could help to make history in NXT. And she helped make history quite rapidly in this division in such a short amount of time. And this includes the historic match with her and Bayley at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. And I saw that was one of the first things that was mentioned by All Star Fandom when we think about these early stages of NXT. So I had to include that. And it says, what a time. I know you're going in order, but Sasha and Bayley, Brooklyn, and the Iron Man match was still two of my favorite matches ever. I can't disagree with you there. I mean, whenever you're thinking about those early stages of NXT, that both matches are certainly going to be in your mind as a fan. Just brilliant storytelling through and through. Obviously, the athleticism and the moves that honestly still to this day, when you go back and you've seen this long history with Bayley and Sasha, it still blows you away of what these women were able to pull off. So it's funny because when I got to this point in the history of the women's NXT history, it was funny because I just put in my mind, once I got to this point with this match at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, come on, we know this match has been studied, analyzed, praised for years, that I didn't want to bore you guys with my review. The only thing that I will say is that this match will, of course, be in the NXT history books as one of the best matches that these two women have pulled off. But even just what NXT was able to pull off with having this match in their history and in this very important pay-per-view that they had, that really solidified that they could really do things outside of Full Sail and really get that fan base, the same type of fan base that the main roster would get with live attendance. So this was such an amazing or important pay-per-view for NXT to nail, and they had such an amazing match with these two women, and they truly pulled off where I think no one would ever think about NXT TakeOver pay-per-view without thinking about this match. It was a picture-perfect match that crowned Bayley as the new NXT Women's Champ. This match also was a sign that the Four Horsewomen were going to be called up. And this all goes into Bayley's NXT title reign. And in this reign, I kind of like calling it where the hugger became the babyface champ. And Bayley's reign started strong and showed that she was not too nice to be an aggressive competitor. I love that this version of Bayley was able to really truly thrive as an uber babyface and be taken seriously as a main eventer. She followed up her impressive win at TakeOver Brooklyn by beating Sasha again at the NXT TakeOver Respect pay-per-view in the first ever 30-minute Iron Women's match in WWE's history. The Iron Women's match needed to be a part of Bayley's title reign, in my opinion, because it showed that her win against Sasha at NXT Brooklyn wasn't a fluke, and that she could actually do it again. When I was looking back at Bayley's reign, I think that it really helped to show that there was a stability in the division, because this was a time when a lot of big names from NXT were being called up. And I think that she really did help to hold it down and kind of create what that next stage in NXT, especially for the women's roster, was going to look like. And she even helped to put over some promising names and newcomers in NXT, like Alexa Bliss, Eva Marie, Carmella, and Nia Jax. These were women that really were trying to get into that title hunt and to really be taken seriously. And I think that Bayley really helped to show that she was a stable champ, that she was going to take on these competitors and even bring something out of them that they probably didn't know, or they did know, but they needed someone like Bayley, who I think is definitely a ring general. to really pull that out of them. And I think that one of the stronger feuds that really tested, once again, what people thought about Bayley was certainly from Nia Jax. So I have to talk about this NXT TakeOver London match that Bayley and Nia Jax had. I absolutely loved the build up to this match. During Bayley's reign, up until this point, all of her opponents were questioning why she even had the title. And I know that that must have gotten to Bayley. Then Nia Jax comes along as this monster heel. And you can't see that Nia's intimidation tactics were starting to work on the psyche of Bayley a bit, kind of getting under the skin of the champ. You can see in this build-up that Bayley would think back to her younger self when she used to write about what she wanted to accomplish in wrestling and how she was really in awe of the fact that her dream actually did come true. She was in WWE and she had won her first major title. This London crowd was so excited to see Bayley that they even made a special chant for her as she came to the ring, which was just, it was so impromptu and just so brilliant. I absolutely love that moment that Bayley was able to have. Nia, she was not fazed by this as the fans were showing love to Bayley. She just kept her head in the game. And Bayley, starting out this match, was smart to use her quickness and was always on defense. Jax is just flinging Bayley early on in this match like a rag doll that at that point, as fans, we started to think, maybe we need to get Bayley some help because she's probably not going to make it out of this match alive. And Bayley really tries to work at tiring Nia out by throwing some swift flying elbows from the ropes. Even with all of Bayley's offense, Nia just unleashes so much onto Bayley that it seems impossible for her to get a leg up. I mean, how do you get up from 3 Samoan drops and I think it was 5 leg drops? Maybe it was the fans that were constantly rooting for Bayley or her strong will, but Bayley kicked out. Bayley is able to get a guillotine in and really destabilizes Nia and gets her to tap out. This was one of Bayley's biggest challenges during her NXT run, and she showed that she was able to go past that and really show that she could take on the monster heels that were going to try to crush her at every turn. And honestly, some people might disagree, but this is actually one of my favorite matches from Nia Jax. I think that when she was in NXT, they really showcased her well. They had her against some really great competitors that really knew how to challenge Nia, but also keep her grounded in the match. So this was one of my favorites from Bayley's title reign. Now, I think that we went from one of Bayley's biggest challenges as champ with fighting Nia, with her getting into one of the strongest feuds and strongest competitors that she has ever faced when she fought against Asuka. And this was one of the best acquisitions that NXT made during the early years, in my opinion. So we get into NXT TakeOver Dallas, and we have Bayley face off against Asuka. And this was certainly a feud that I was really hoping to see, and we actually got that. You can see that when William Regal announced that Asuka was going to be Bayley's next opponent, that she was dreading having to face off against her. This match was 6 months into Asuka's time at NXT. And early on in this match, Asuka is trying to get those kicks and strikes in. And to Bayley's credit, it seemed like she had done some extensive research on Asuka, and she was making some quick escapes and counters out of Asuka's holds, which was quite different from the experiences that other women in NXT at that point had with Asuka. They really could not counter many things that she was doing. So you were seeing that Bayley really came to work in this match. She really wanted to make sure that she was trying to have a counter for everything that Asuka was going to throw at her. But throughout the match, you start to see that Asuka is too much for the champ. Bayley slightly makes a comeback a little bit towards the end, but Asuka quickly gets a submission in to get the win. It happened so fast, honestly, that I think that some of the fans were just genuinely shocked, because I don't think that they thought that Bayley was going to lose her title in this match. I think that they thought, just like how it was with Nia, that this was going to be some really strong competition for Bayley, but she was not going to lose the title. So I thought that this was actually a great move on NXT's part to show how lethal Asuka was, and to really just get her over as someone that is a threat to the women's roster. And we get into Asuka's title reign, the Joshi legend. Asuka was the first Japanese female wrestler to sign with WWE since Bull Nakano in 1994. So Asuka's title reign showcased that Joshi wrestling definitely surpassed American wrestling, women's wrestling, and was already successful for decades, and that WWE really needed to draw from that well of Joshi wrestling. Asuka brought another level of competition that had not been seen in the NXT women's locker room. So we kind of start off with the amazing buildup that they had for Asuka coming into NXT. And it kind of definitely started off with her debut match against Dana Brooke. I think that it was safe to say that everyone was just excited to see Asuka, but we certainly knew what the outcome was going to be in this match. So after some amazing video packages building up Asuka setting foot into a ring, we finally got that moment at NXT TakeOver Respect in October of 2015. This was a match to solidify that Asuka was not one to mess with, and she took on the total diva Dana Brooke. And this match, in my opinion, accomplished two things. It showed off the incredible in-ring ability that Asuka has, and it proved that Dana was certainly improving in the ring, and she actually did hold up against the Empress of Tomorrow, which was not an easy task. But it still proved to not be enough when Asuka gets that Asuka lock in and caused Dana to tap out. So we really see that the age of Asuka had begun at this point with this debut. At that point, just like I said, in 6 months of her being in NXT, she wins the title against Bayley. And then we start off with seeing Asuka's title reign, which was awesome. And we're just going to highlight two key matches, I feel, in that title reign. And the first one is this match at NXT TakeOver The End against Nia Jax. So we see that Nia Jax is truly feeling that she still can take away that, even though she did not win the title again from Bayley, that she still broke Bayley, and she's holding on to having that, and to still feel like she is one of the superior wrestlers on the roster. And this was a superb match to me and feud between Asuka and Nia Jax, because I hope that it really helped to solidify that Nia was a monster heel and that Asuka could in fact slay the dragon. And I love that in the buildup of this match, Nia was making it clear that she broke the former champ Bayley, and that she could break this so-called unbeatable wrestler in Asuka. She was not afraid, like most people were on the roster of Asuka. She wanted to take that opportunity to show that she could beat her. So you see two women that are absolutely not intimidated by each other, but have such different styles that it really did work great together. So in the beginning of this match, Asuka immediately goes for the attack, but Nia literally throws Asuka around like a rag doll to the other side of the ring in the beginning of the match. And at that point, Nia has all of the offense and is just toying with the champ, which I was a bit surprised to see in this match, but it was extremely entertaining. Even bending Asuka like a pretzel around the ring post. So you started to see that some naysayers that were seeing a very new Nia, Jack, she was very new to the roster, actually hold her own with Asuka. So that was pretty cool to see. We see a brutal choke slam that seems to be the end for Asuka, but somehow she gets back up. Asuka pulls out an armbar after getting a deadly power bomb, really showing how resilient she is. 3 vicious kicks to Nia's face finally takes this woman out. And even though Nia is not like most girls, she is like most girls on this roster where she got counted out and Asuka kept her title. Just like how I feel that Nia had really good chemistry with Bayley at this time, specifically in NXT. I felt that way in this match with Nia and Asuka. So not only do we see that it wasn't a fluke that Asuka became the champ, she was able to take out one of the deadliest women on the NXT roster at this time. So when you're seeing that Asuka keeps getting this competition and she keeps knocking them all out, what does NXT do? They decide that they have to import some talent to come in and take on Asuka. So they bring someone that is not unfamiliar with WWE at all. They bring Mickie James in to challenge Asuka. And we see this awesome match between Asuka and Mickie James for the NXT Women's title. This is one of my favorite matches, not just in Asuka's title reign, but just in the history of NXT Women's division. This was such a great comeback match for Mickie James and a strong competitor for Asuka, who really was just running through the women's division. At this point, Asuka was running high with her title reign, and it really did what we thought would take a former 5-time WWE Women's Champion to come back to the company after a 6-year absence to challenge the Empress of Tomorrow. Mickie was met with a wild response from the crowd as they chanted "Welcome back," and that was a really cool moment for Mickie to have. I think with Mickie coming specifically to NXT before going to the main roster, I think it really set home that Mickie was very impressed with what she was seeing over the past few years with the women in NXT. And she, kind of wanted to dip her toe in the water and see what it was like to challenge an NXT Women's Champion. She certainly got that. You can just see how she was beaming with pride and with joy to actually be back in WWE. And the crowd in the front row was filled with fans that donned the Asuka mask, giving Asuka this jolt of energy coming into this match. And you see both women have a mutual respect for one another, but they absolutely want to come out of this match on top. And we see Mickie and Asuka are quick as lightning, trying to get a submission hold on one another. Asuka retreats out of the ring for just a minute to gain her bearings, and Mickie plays this up and holds the ropes open to let Asuka back in the ring with a cocky smile on her face. But Asuka gets revenge after she lays into Mickie, and Mickie has to herself take a breather outside of the ring as well. And Asuka just holds open those ropes. And you see that both women mutually see that they are taking each other to the limit, but that does not stop them from staying at that super quick pace that they're working on this match. Asuka gets some stiff kicks in, but Mickie isn't staying down at all, even getting a Muda lock in, but Asuka fights to get to the ropes. Mickie counters everything that Asuka delivers and does it with a smile on her face. It really blew the fans away in attendance, and it certainly did with me. And it really just went to go show how Mickie has such great chemistry with so many different women that have completely different styles in the ring. And you saw that throughout her career, that she just really knows how to bring the best out of someone, but then really knows how to showcase the wealth of styles that she has. These women were so great together in the ring. So we see a series of attempted submissions, resulting in Asuka getting the chicken wing in to retain her title. Nikki couldn't help being in that chicken wing to tap out before something was broken. And we see that even though Nikki was a bit heartbroken to lose this match, she still wanted to show that respect to Asuka. She holds out her hand at the end of the match to shake, but Asuka just holds up the belt to Nikki's face and makes it very clear she doesn't care about a handshake. She doesn't care about having the respect of Nikki. She just cares that she's able to walk out of that match with the title, which I loved, because I am really over everyone feeling like they have to shake hands after a match. I like sometimes that you have two competitors that literally just went to their absolute limit, and they honestly only care about coming out with that title. And they literally don't want to shake hands. They don't want to be friends with the person. They don't want to cry and hold each other after that in a hug. They just want to show that they came out and they did what they knew that they could do, which was win. And Asuka definitely showed her dominance as a champ. She was able to say that she defeated a multi-time WWE Women's Champion, and she came out alive from that. And I think that even though Nikki was, a bit distraught to lose this title opportunity, honestly, with this match, it just really put into everyone's mind that Nikki should have never left WWE, even though that was not her decision, because she literally could hold her own. But at the same time, it was kind of meant to be, because she really showed throughout her career that she was not just a WWE wrestler. She was a wrestler's wrestler, that she could go anywhere and really make a name for herself. And this match was so impressive to everyone that Nikki was able to have another run in WWE on the main roster. So at this point, we're NXT. We kind of see that the cat is out of the bag completely, that the NXT women's division was phenomenal. It was getting attention from everywhere, being talked about, written about in major publications by major journalists at this point. And it was truly setting the tone for what the main roster would do. At that point, it had so many women that helped to establish NXT as a big deal already on the main roster, that NXT really just became a brand, even though it's still seen as a developmental territory. Even to this day, at this point, it was just a major deal in wrestling. It even encouraged WWE to put on specialty shows like the Mae Young Classic, and eventually the first and only WWE Women's Pay-Per-View, Evolution. So it really was, and this is why I thought it was a good idea to kind of cap how much I was going to talk about when it came to the history of the NXT Women's Division, because at this point, even though the long line of amazing women's champions continued to go on past this point, at this stage, it kind of stopped becoming like the early stages of NXT, and then everyone was just used to seeing such strong wrestling. So I thought it would be good to kind of stop in that 2016 marker. And honestly, at that point, NXT developed into a new chapter at that point. So this, what was discussed, the different title reigns that were discussed up until this point, was really those early stages of setting up the foundation for what we know and love about NXT now. So I really hope that you enjoyed having that time to look back and see how much was done in such a short amount of time for this women's roster. I certainly loved going down memory lane and seeing even things that I kind of forgotten, and how many women had come out of NXT and really made a name for themselves. Even women that didn't have such a strong run on the main roster that honestly still fit in that fabric of what made NXT what it is. So I definitely hope that you enjoyed this episode of Deep Dive. I certainly loved going over it. If there are some matches that I mentioned that you haven't seen yet, I definitely encourage you to. It's always a pleasure talking about these amazing moments in women that really make women's wrestling great. So I hope that you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to come back soon with another episode of Deep Dive. So I hope to see you then. Bye.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.